Good morning, everybody. This is Tom Nowakowski, and I want to welcome you to the Adjusters247.com News and Views for Claims Professionals webinar. We do one of these webinars every week on Saturday mornings at this time, and what we do is give you a little bit of information about Adjusters247.com. We talk about this past week's podcast, and then we'll discuss any suggestions or questions that you might have. Today in our training segment, we're going to be discussing the ice dam and excessive snow load claims. With all the blizzards that's been going on, we have a bunch of adjusters that listen to us and are currently deployed or in the process of being deployed to handle these type of claims. And we had a request that we talk about that a little bit today, and so that's going to be in our training segment. First of all, I want to give everybody a little bit of an agenda as to what we're going to be covering. We're going to do a brief overview of Adjusters247.com and describe the podcast information, the blog posts that we send out, how you can download and listen to the podcast. For those of you who have been to the webinars before, this is going to be familiar to you. We start every webinar with this because we have so many new adjusters that are joining us for the first time that are interested and curious as to what we do. So I'm going to give a little bit of a brief overview of Adjusters 24/7, also their social media involvement, and then we'll move into the training segment on ice dams and snow claims. Once we get done with the training segment, we're going to have a question and answer period and an open discussion on any topic that you wish to discuss. If any time during this period that you have any kind of questions, you can utilize the question mark part of the GoToWebinar screen and type in those questions. I do check and monitor the questions as we go through the webinar, and I try to answer as many of them as we can while we are in the process of going through the material. But that way, if you have any questions, you can go and type them out, send them to me, and I'll be glad to answer those. Everybody starts off the webinar in muted mode, and at the end of the webinar and the training material, I'm going to open everything up for a discussion where I unmute everybody. So if you do have a topic that you wish to discuss with everybody that's on the webinar, save that till the end, and I'll open up all of the microphones so that you can go and have that discussion at the end of the webinar and our time with each other today. Again, we start off with a little bit of information about Adjusters247.com and what we do and why we do it. And basically, we're dedicated to providing claims professionals the information that they need to become more efficient and proficient in this business. I've been in the business for 32 years, and I learn something new about this business every single day. But what we found is that by having some continual sort of training, it will increase QA scores and lower cycle times, which we all know will lead to better customer service, not just for the clients, but for the insureds as well. And regardless of your position or level of experience, the material that we discuss in each podcast will help us all be better in our everyday lives. We touch on a lot of different topics in every podcast daily, and it's designed, and I'll show you a little bit of the format here in just a minute, but it's designed to have a little bit of something for everybody, regardless of the level of experience or the number of years they've been in the business. We try to make sure that we cover all of the different areas of insurance, and we make sure that any requests or suggestions that we get, we incorporate those into the podcasts and future webinars as well, like today's webinar. Now, in addition to our daily podcast and the weekly training webinar, Adjusters 24/7 provides a weekly newsletter and daily blog posts that we use to distribute all of the information. Now, all of this can be found on our website. If you haven't been to our website yet, the address is www.adjusters247.com. While you're at that website, we have a lot of information that's here, and a lot of it starts right on the home page, and we try to give a little bit of information on the home page to give you some background. And then there's also several links that you'll be able to use to register for the newsletters that we distribute, also to send us emails and any comments that you might have. There's a link to set up the blog RSS so that you would receive those automatically in your email browser, whether it's Outlook or the other ones. You can go and set those and then sign up for the webinars. There's a link here as well. All of the links for our social media is listed here. And then we have a calendar of upcoming events that's updated every week with what's coming up for the following week. And also there's a box here to send us any kind of questions or messages that you might have. And those are all responded to immediately right away, and we make sure that we stay in touch as best we can with whatever questions you might have and the answers that you might be desiring. Also, part of our website has a section that I like called the media resources, and here we list all of our recent blog posts. They're all listed here. You can click to download and read the latest newsletter that we have. And then the library of all of our prior podcasts are listed here for you to be able to go and listen to and download at your leisure. And we had our 50th episode yesterday, which we're quite proud of. And then in addition to all of the different materials that are here, you can also get access to all of our prior YouTube videos that are listed in chronological order. So all that is right here. We also have a link or a page called Important Links. Here you'll find information about current storm activity that's going on. We also have links to Action Catastrophe Team, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit, and some of our other affiliates that we're familiar with are all going to be listed here. You'll all be able to get any quick links from the Important Links section. And then I'm going to talk here in a minute about our blog posts that we send out. You can also get to our blog posts from the website as well, and all of that information is updated daily and is available for you to go and take a look at. Now, once we go and have our podcast, I want to talk about for a second. The podcasts are all formatted in the same way every single day. The information is different every day, but we try to stick to this format because it does help us to go and cover a lot of different material. And regardless of the years of experience or the position that the adjusters are currently having, we want to make sure that there's something for everybody in each podcast. And we start off with an introduction with some contact information and who the show's guests are going to be for that day. Then we move straight into a weather update, and we have storm reports from around the country. And whatever the severe weather is, whether it's the winter storms or hail or tornadoes, hurricanes, we'll have up-to-the-minute weather updates that we start every show off with. And then we move into our severe, or I should say our storm tips and our catastrophe operations segment. Now here we discuss any current deployments that are currently going on, anything that we're aware of. And we also offer pre-storm and post-storm reports from the field. And what we do in this situation is we want to, especially in a severe catastrophe operation, we want to make sure that if you are deployed to an area, we're getting information straight from that area and people that we know in that area that have already been deployed, CAT operations managers that I'm familiar with, and different adjusters that are going to be in those areas. We're going to be getting the lay of the land from those individuals before you even have to show up in town. We'll have advice on where there's good places to stay, where there's food, where there's electricity, lodging. All those things are part of the podcast. And before anything happens, we offer a lot of pre-storm tips and things that people need to be prepared for. And we use this segment for for that purpose. Then we move into claim industry news. We discuss anything that is current and trending in the insurance industry. There's always a hot button every single day, and we try to bring all that news and information to our listeners on a daily basis so you can be kept up to date on it. And then we also list any job opportunities that we currently have heard of, including daily and catastrophe. And then we put all that information together and use this segment to disseminate that information to everybody that's listening. Then we move into our Adjusting 101 segment, and that is designed for our newer adjusters, or as a refresher for those that haven't been out in the field for a while. We try to go and keep things a little bit more simpler in this segment, covering some of the basics and some of the the tools of the trade that people are going to need once they get out there and start adjusting, once they get their first deployment. And we use all of these segments to educate adjusters and claims professionals, but this segment here is geared more towards the newer adjusters. And then we move into our seasoned adjuster time, where we discuss policies and procedures and technology issues for people that have been in the business for a while. As I said earlier, I've been in the business for 32 years, and I learn something new every single day. We know that a lot of adjusters that have been in the business for a little while, they get into a complacency where they don't feel that they need to expand anymore on their training or get into any of the newer technologies that are coming on. But there's a lot that changes every single day, whether it's new policies or new procedures. I got several updates this week on technology issues that are, and we talked about in the podcast this week, with high-tech ways that the claims industry is moving, and ways that we need to go and stay ahead of that. And we use this segment for that type of information. Then we move into our time management and organizational tips and tricks section of our podcast. And here we not only include time management and organizational management tips, but we also have stress management that's a part of that, and health and wellness that we include in this section. We also know from years of experience just how stressful this business can be. And a lot of people suffer from burnout because they don't know how to handle some of the stressors that come along with this business. So we try to pass along different tips and tricks to manage that stress in a healthy way, and also to help people learn how to find more time in the day and ways to stay more organized to get as much efficiency and proficiency that they can out of each and every single day. And then we move into our reality check segment, and this is where we share different successes and setbacks that we all have learned, and ways for people to try to learn from our successes and our setbacks that we've had along the way. The working as a CAT adjuster for as many years as I did was very rewarding, and I loved it, and I wouldn't have traded a minute for it. But I was not prepared for some of the things that I ran into, like sleeping in my truck for 2 weeks and basically bathing in a gas station restroom and eating Red Cross meals, because I was deployed to an area where there wasn't any other way to live at that moment. So we share some of those different reality checks with everybody and those experiences, and we have different guests that join us that have had some of the same, and we use that segment to relate some of those stories and some of that feedback from people who have been there for a while and know what they're talking about. And then in our show ending, we go and answer any questions that we've received and preview the next day's podcast agenda and the upcoming week's webinar. But then we also talk about any upcoming events and certification classes that we're going to be having, and all the different ways that you can reach us on social media, and the different ways to contact us at Adjusters247.com. Now, immediately after we produce the podcast itself, it's uploaded to our hosting site, and within minutes, the RSS feed sends all the shows out to iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, We have several different distribution outlets, TuneIn, SoundCloud, all the different ones will all be listed where you can go and just click on the link to listen to the latest one or listen to any of the prior shows that we've had. At that point, we send out a blog post letting everybody know that the newest show has been produced and it is available to listen to at that point. We also send all of that to our social media sites, including Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google+, YouTube, and all the other major ones that are out there. But of course, any emails or phone calls that we get from claims professionals that need some sort of guidance, they always take priority, and we respond to those immediately and make sure that everybody's able to get the answers they need to any questions. And all of this is free of charge. There's no fees associated with it. This is just a way of us to share the experience that we have with the others that are coming up behind us, and there'll never be a charge for any type of free advice or anything that you might have a question about. We're always available by email or through any of our social media to get in touch with us, and we can always help you in any way, even if it's just trying to get in with some other adjusting firms and some advice in those directions. By now, you should have a pretty good idea of what we do and how we do it. You also should know how to be able to listen to the podcast and how to find us and how we communicate with the claims professionals that we currently have. Now, our future plans, we have a lot of them, and there's a lot of exciting things that we've been working on for the last few months that are all coming to fruition here within the next couple of weeks. But we always want to expand the number of claims professionals that we're reaching with our message, and that's the only request that I would have for you is if you are interested in helping us and you like what you see and hear, just forward one of our updates or forward our website address to any of your claim associates and let them know all the good things that we're doing here and that we're available as a resource for them, and just an extra tool in their tool bag. And then we can go and add more claims professionals to our listenership and get the word out that way. We also are adding more and more reference material to our website every week, and this week is no exception. We have a lot that is being installed this week, so be watching the website for updates and changes, and I'll have those in our blog post as well. We also have some claims-related sponsors that are coming into our family, and as I said, there's a major announcement that's planned within the next 2 weeks to go and share all the good things that are happening with everybody that's been there from the beginning with us. Now, this week's claim-related training is on handling snow, ice dam, and collapse claims. There's been a lot in the news, and this time of year, these blizzards that we've been having all over the Midwest and Northeast have really, they've been measuring it in feet, not inches up there. And I've worked several ice dam catastrophe deployments over the years, many snow and collapse and blizzards over the years. And handling these type of claims are difficult if you have never handled them before, because there's a lot of different things that you have to be concerned with. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about first is the ice dam situation. And I want to explain a little bit about exactly what an ice dam is. And basically, an ice dam is a ridge of ice that forms at the edge of the roof. And it prevents the melting snow, which is coming down as water, from draining off of the roof. The water then backs up through the shingles or through the gutters or any place that it can find a way and into the home, and it causes damage to the walls, the ceilings, the insulation, and other areas on the interior of the dwelling. This figure here that I have, it shows a cross-section of a home that has an ice dam, and as you can see, there's a complex interaction that goes on with heat loss from the inside of the house itself, the snow cover that's on top of the roof, and then the actual temperature of the outside air that that is on top of that snow. And basically what happens is you have a bunch of snow up on the roof, and then this heat that comes through the house through what's called conduction, it starts melting the snow on the top portion of the roof. As that starts warming and the water starts melting and draining, then you end up having a situation like these photos here, where you can see near the peak of the roof, that roof has started to warm either from something on the inside or radiation heat from the sun itself. But as that section is starting to melt, then you end up having this area pool around the gutters, and then it backs up into the house. This is a view from a ladder where it shows, you know, the thickness of the ice that's accumulated, because down here at this lower portion of the roof, that temperature is still below freezing. So as that water's draining down the pitch, it's actually freezing on top of itself, and that's what creates the dam. The dammed water goes and backs all of that water up into the dwelling itself. It comes down into the attic areas. It'll come down into the interior walls themselves. It'll actually wet and settle the wall insulation that's here, and will cause all kinds of mold and mildew and water stains on the inside of the dwelling itself. And then you'll end up with a huge problem at the interior, and it usually shows itself around the ceilings. And I got a picture or two here coming up where, you know, it finds its way through the cracks or openings in the roof and into the inside. A lot of times it'll come in around these dormer areas, and it could run anywhere throughout that house. Sometimes you'll find it along the edges where a pitched roof meets the flashing of an adjacent roof here at the where it meets the main dwelling. But any place that water can find a place to get in, it will, and then it'll run the rafters, and it'll run the ceilings, and it'll come out in various ways. Most of the time they form right there as a result of that roof heating up a little bit on the upper areas, and then going and causing that damage on the inside. Typically, whenever you have that situation, one of the first things that you want to do is try to get that ice off of that roof as best you can. But the main way to prevent it is to control the heat loss that's inside the dwelling. A lot of times it comes in through the light fixture holes that are in the ceiling. It could come from an improperly vented attic area, or the insulation may not be sufficient enough to cover the inside. If it's safe for the insurers to do so, I always, you know, one of the first things that you'll see during a ice dam situation is like this photo here, where this guy is trying to shovel off his roof. What happens a lot of times is, as that, whether it's the ice dam that forms and causes damage to the interior, or you have, just like we've had in the news this last week, a lot of collapses due to the weight of the snow that it's accumulated on those roofs. And I want to talk about this for a minute, because a lot of these pictures, you know, that it shows that there's obvious collapse, and the weight of the snow caused the collapse, and that would be a covered loss with the policy, you know, being written the way that they are. Collapse is covered under the policy. However, it has to be a complete collapse. It can't be a partial collapse, or that you know, there's anything that's close to falling in. That's not considered a collapse. It has to be an actual collapse, like you're seeing in these photos here, for it to be covered under the policy. Most of the times, and this is some photos that I was talking about, this is an ice dam situation that caused this wet and moldy on the interior of this dwelling because of an ice dam. But when you have bowing in of the ceilings, like you have in these photos here, or the cracking along that wall, and this is an illustration of the bowing that occurs from the weight, that is not covered under the insurance policies. Collapse is very specific. It is not an all risk type coverage or open perils type coverage. They have to be, the collapse has to be the result of any of the, basically the covered perils under coverage C for your contents. Hidden decay, hidden insect or vermin damage, the weight of contents, equipment, animals, weight of rain collecting on the roof, or even the use of defective materials, that would be covered under the policy if you know the policy is a standard HO3 policy. You have to make sure that when you're looking at any type of damage occurring to the snow load situation, that you are looking for actual collapse. And it sounds crazy, I know. I've had to say it a couple of times over the years, and insureds have said it to me. They said, so if this thing falls in, it's covered, but the insurance company's not going to pay for me to go and prevent that from happening. And the answer is no, it's not going to be covered. And we do not pay for something that might happen in an insurance policy. And I had a call this week from an adjuster who was in that same situation, and we had a discussion about it. And unfortunately, part of the policy is that the insureds have a duty after a loss to protect the property from any further damage and have to mitigate their damages. And you have to advise the insureds of that there is no way that this is going to be covered under the policy unless it's an actual collapse, and any damage that is sustained, or any damage that is caused by that not paying attention to mitigating their damage and not making temporary repairs the way that they're supposed to, that probably wouldn't be covered as well. Now, personal property under this policy, there is generally a condition, the peril insured against, for weight of ice, snow, or sleet. That's generally covered. If their contents are damaged, that's generally covered. Mostly though, especially with windstorm and hail and any other type of peril, there has to be a hole or an opening that's created by the windstorm or hail through which the water entered for there to be any type of coverage for the contents. So if you do have damaged contents, remember that's typically a named peril policy. You have to look and see if the approximate cause of that damage was any of the perils that are insured against. If they are, then you would have coverage for those contents items. There's times where you might pay for damage to a ceiling that's water damage like this, but if they had damaged contents and there was no hole or an opening that was created, the contents would not be covered. So you always have to make sure you dissect each part of the coverage for the claims that you go out on and determine whether, number one, it's an all-risk policy that applies, if it's additional coverage like collapse, and what the rules of that additional coverage being covered are, and then check to see what the perils are insured against for that additional coverage, and then see if there's any limits or anything that would pertain to that. And then if you're dealing with content, you always want to make sure that you identify whatever the peril was that caused the damage and see if it is one of the named perils of that policy. So that basically explains ice dams and anything that you'd run into with collapse, with snow. This week we plan on discussing CAT deployments that are currently happening and the type of deployments that they are. We also are having a couple of days on third-party liability claims and inland marine claims. We're going to have some sessions on theft losses and burglary losses, fire investigations, and we'll always add any topic that we get a request to discuss. We have a lot of interviews planned with several guests this week, and we also are going to be making sure that we direct as many carriers and adjusters to Action Catastrophe Team's website. If you haven't been to their website yet, if you go to www.actioncatastropheteam.com and you're not registered with them, go to the adjuster information sheet page here. There's only a couple of boxes to send them your contact information, and that way you can get added to their roster as well. Next week's webinar, we're going to have inland marine policies that we're going to be discussing, including art losses, antiques, and collectibles. And Mr. PJ Zadok of Fine Arts Insurance Consultants is going to be joining us. He has 35 years of experience dealing with insurance carriers and as a consultant for those type of losses. And he will be part of our webinar next week. He's got a bunch of exhibits he's putting together, and that'll be really informative to have him as part of the webinar with us. All right, now it's question and answer time. I'm going to go, and I did get a couple of questions during the webinar, and I answered them as we were going along. But I am going to go and unmute everybody, and if you have any kind of questions, go ahead and ask them now.
Matter of convenience.
Okay, at this point, somebody had something else going on in the background, so I muted it back again. As I said, I did go and answer all the questions that we had during the webinar, and I definitely want to thank everybody for joining us today. I know you have a lot better things to be doing on your Saturday mornings than listening to me ramble on for 45 minutes or so. But every Saturday morning we do this at 11 o'clock. We'll be having a webinar discussing topics that we covered in the prior week's podcast, and also anything that you want to discuss will be added to those as well. We do these totally live, no replays. The login link that you use for today is all you need to log into any of our Saturday sessions. So keep joining us every Saturday for new information. Now, at the end of the day today, what you saw today was going to be up on our website in the Media Resources page. If you need to get a hold of me directly, we do have the office number on our website, but my cell phone number is 754-208-7049. That's 754-208-7049. And my email address is tom@adjusters247.com. You can get in touch with me anytime if you have any questions, any comments, any suggestions, good or bad or ugly. Send it to me. I do pay attention to all of it, and I will respond to you. Since there's nothing else, we don't have any other questions that's come in. I hope everybody has a great weekend, and be safe, and God bless.